Emma Hartley stared at her reflection in the fogged-up mirror of her tiny London flat, the steam from her shower clinging to the air like the weight of impending doom. It was mid-December, and the city outside her window was a glittering frenzy of fairy lights and frantic shoppers. But inside, her stomach twisted into knots. Christmas was just 2 weeks away. And this year, her family's annual gathering at their cozy cottage in the Cotswolds promised to be more excruciating than ever. Her mom had already started the subtle interrogations during their weekly phone calls. "Any special someone joining us this year, love? Your cousin Sarah's bringing her fiancé, you know, and Aunt Muriel keeps asking about you." Emma sighed, wiping the mirror clear. At 28, she was thriving in her career as a marketing executive for a boutique publishing house in Soho, pitching ideas for best-selling romances, ironically enough, but her love life was a barren wasteland. Her last relationship had ended 6 months ago, courtesy of her ex's wandering eye and a poorly timed work trip. Now, the thought of facing the pitying glances and well-meaning setups from relatives made her want to fake about a flu and hide under her duvet with a tub of Ben & Jerry's. But no, she couldn't bail. Not when her grand, frail but feisty at 85, had insisted this might be her last proper Christmas with the whole clan. Emma needed a plan. A boyfriend, fake or otherwise, to deflect the questions and let her enjoy the mulled wine and mince pies in peace. Scrolling through dating apps felt desperate, and asking a mate to play along risked awkwardness. What she needed was a miracle. The hook came that very evening, as Emma bundled up in her wool coat and scarf, heading to the bustling Christmas market in Covent Garden. The air was crisp, laced with the scent of roasted chestnuts and cinnamon, and carolers sang "Deck the Halls" under strings of twinkling lights. She was meeting her best friend Lily for a much-needed catch-up over hot chocolate, but Lily was running late, as usual. Emma wandered the stalls, admiring handmade ornaments, and sipping a gingerbread latte to ward off the chill. That's when she spotted him, or rather, overheard the commotion. A gaggle of well-heeled women in designer coats were clustered around a tall, impeccably dressed man near the mulled wine stand. He had that effortless charisma, dark hair swept back, piercing blue eyes, and a jawline that could cut glass. But his expression was one of polite exasperation as one of the women, a blonde with a laugh like shattering crystal, leaned in too close, fluttering her lashes. "Darling, you simply must come to my New Year's gala," she purred, her hand brushing his arm. "It's at my estate in Surrey, black tie, of course." The man, Alexander Voss, as Emma would later learn, smiled thinly, stepping back. "I'm afraid I'm spoken for," he replied, his voice smooth with a hint of an accent she couldn't place. Perhaps a touch of European polish over British roots. The blonde pouted. "Oh, come on, Alex. Everyone knows you're London's most eligible bachelor. No ring on that finger yet." Emma, eavesdropping shamelessly from behind a stall of scented candles, felt a pang of sympathy. She knew that pressure all too well. The societal expectation to pair up, especially during the holidays. Before she could think better of it, her phone buzzed with a text from Lily. "Stuck in traffic. 20 minutes late. Sorry." Frustrated, Emma turned to leave, but in her haste, she bumped straight into the man himself. Her latte sloshed, staining his pristine navy coat with a sticky brown streak. "Oh, God, I'm so sorry," she exclaimed, mortified, fumbling for napkins from her bag. "I'm such a klutz. Let me clean that up." He chuckled, a low, warm sound that cut through the market's din. "No harm done. It's just coffee. Could be worse. Could be mulled wine." Up close, he was even more striking, with a subtle stubble and eyes that sparkled under the lights. But there was something weary in his gaze, like a man carrying the weight of expectations far heavier than her own. The blonde and her entourage were still watching, whispering. Alexander glanced their way, then leaned in closer to Emma, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Pretend you're with me, just for a moment. I'll owe you one." Emma blinked, her heart skipping. "What? Why?" He flashed a grin that could melt snow. "Let's just say I'm in need of a festive escape. Play along?" She hesitated, but the absurdity of it all, the market's magic, her own desperation, made her nod. "All right, stranger, but make it convincing." He slipped an arm around her waist, pulling her gently into his side as if it were the most natural thing. "Darling," he said loudly enough for the group to hear. "There you are." I was starting to worry. The blonde's eyes narrowed, but she backed off with a huff, her friends trailing behind. Emma felt a thrill of adrenaline, mixed with the warmth of his touch. As the women disappeared into the crowd, Alexander released her, stepping back with an apologetic smile. "Thank you," he said sincerely. "That law had been hounding me all evening. I'm Alexander, by the way." "Alex." "Emma," she replied, still buzzing. "And no problem. I get it. Holiday pressures are the worst." He tilted his head, studying her. "You sound like you speak from experience." She laughed ruefully. "You have no idea. My family's Christmas due is looming, and I'm the only one without a plus one. It's like being the last mince pie on the plate. Everyone feels sorry for you." Alex's eyes lit up with intrigue. "Fancy that. I'm in a similar bind. Business obligations, nosy investors expecting me to settle down. What if we helped each other?" Emma raised an eyebrow. "You mean fake it? For real?" "Just for the holidays," he said, his tone light but earnest. "No strings. Think about it. Dinner's on me tonight as a thank you, and we can discuss terms." She should have walked away. He was a stranger, after all, and this sounded like the plot of one of her company's romance novels. But as snowflakes began to drift down, blanketing the market in a soft glow, Emma felt a spark of possibility. What harm could come from one dinner? Little did she know, Alex Voss wasn't just any man. He was a reclusive billionaire CEO of Vostech, an empire built on innovative software that powered half the world's smart cities. And this chance encounter was about to turn her ordinary Christmas into something extraordinarily complicated. As they strolled toward a nearby bistro, chatting easily about London's festive chaos, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that she just stepped into her own story, one with twists she couldn't yet foresee. The bistro Alex chose was tucked down a cobbled alley in Covent Garden, the kind of place that didn't need a sign, because the smell of garlic and wood-fired pizza drew people in any way. Inside, fairy lights were strung along exposed brick, and a small Christmas tree twinkled by the bar. It felt intimate, almost conspiratorial, exactly the sort of spot where questionable life decisions are made over bottles of decent Chianti. They were shown to a corner table. Alex shrugged off his ruined coat, without complaint, and hung on the back of the chair like a man who owned a dozen more. Emma tried not to stare. Up close, without the distraction of the market crowd, he was unfairly handsome in that careless, moneyed way. The sort of man who probably had his shirts made in Naples and his hair cut by someone who charged more per hour than she earned in a day. A waiter appeared instantly. Alex ordered in flawless Italian, then glanced at her. "Red or white?" "Red," she said, because it felt like a red wine sort of evening. When the waiter left, Alex leaned forward, elbows on the table, and fixed it with a look that was half amusement, half challenge. "So, Emma Hartley, tell me why a clever, clearly competent woman is panicking about arriving at her family's Christmas dinner alone." She laughed, a little too loudly. "You make it sound ridiculous." "It is ridiculous," he said, not unkindly, "but I'm hardly one to judge. I'm considering hiring a girlfriend for the season." The waiter returned with the wine. They clinked glasses, and Emma took a fortifying sip. "My grand's ill," she said quietly. "This might be her last Christmas. Everyone will be there. Cousins with babies, cousins with husbands, my perfect sister with her perfect dentist fiancé. If I turn up single again, the sympathy will be suffocating. Mum will try to set me up with a neighbor's son who still lives above his parents' garage. Aunt Muriel will tell me my eggs are going off like milk left on the radiator. I just want one peaceful holiday." Alex listened, head tilted. "And you think bringing a man, forgive me, pretend billionaire will shut them up?" "I think bringing any man will shut them up," she corrected. "You being stupidly good-looking is just a bonus." He grinned. "Flattery. Good start." The carbonara arrived, twirled into perfect nests. Emma realized she was starving and attacked hers with unladylike enthusiasm. Alex watched, amused. "Here's the thing," he said, twirling pasta with infuriating elegance. "I need the same favor. My board wants me settled. Investors like stability. There's a charity gala on the 23rd. Then Christmas Eve with my mother in Oxfordshire. She's convinced I'm lonely and keeps inviting the daughters of her bridge club. Last year, one of them proposed by the cheese board. Emma snorted. Poor you. It was a very aggressive Stilton, he deadpanned. They both laughed, and for a moment it felt normal, like meeting a charming stranger in a warm restaurant a week before Christmas. Then he reached into his jacket and slid a sleek black folder across the table. I had my assistant draft something. Non-disclosure. Terms, expectations. Nothing creepy, he added quickly when her eyebrows shot up. Just clear boundaries, so neither of us ends up on the front of the Daily Mail. Emma opened the folder. The contract was beautifully printed on thick cream paper. She scanned it, half expecting jokes about sexual favors. Instead, it was surprisingly sane. Duration, 22 to 27 December. Public displays of affection limited to hand-holding, arms around waist, 1-1. Kiss on cheek if absolutely necessary. Separate bedrooms at all times. Either party may end the arrangement with no notice and no penalty. Compensation, £15,000 wired upon conclusion, plus all expenses. She looked up, stunned. You're going to pay me 15 grand to eat turkey with your mom? I'm going to pay you 15 grand so we both survive the holidays with our sanity, he corrected. You'll also save me from marrying Honoria Fortescue Blake and her corgis. Emma closed the folder. This is insane. Completely, he agreed, but it's also practical. 1 week. We'll be excruciatingly polite to each other's families, drink too much slow gin, and part as friends in the new year. No one gets hurt. She studied him. There was something in his eyes, an almost imperceptible flicker of loneliness beneath the polished charm. She recognized it because she felt it too. What if they hate me? She asked. They won't, he said simply. You're impossible to hate. The waiter cleared their plates. Outside, snow had started to fall in fat, lazy flakes. Emma took another sip of wine. Separate bedrooms is non-negotiable? Completely. And I can bail whenever? Whenever. She thought of Gran's frail smile in last week's FaceTime call. Thought of Aunt Muriel's voice. Are you bringing anyone nice, dear? Thought of the quiet ache she carried around like loose change. She picked up the Mont Blanc pen beside the contract. Where do I sign? Alex's smile was slow and genuine, the first unguarded one she'd seen. Welcome to the madness, Emma Hartley. As she signed her name with a flourish, the snow thickened beyond the window, and the little bistro felt suddenly like the beginning of something neither of them had planned. Outside, London glittered, oblivious. Inside, two strangers toasted the most ridiculous Christmas either of them would ever have. The rehearsal. The first time Emma saw Alex's flat, she almost laughed out loud. She'd expected something flashy, glass walls, a cinema room, perhaps a helicopter pad on a roof. Instead, he buzzed her up to the top 2 floors of a restored Georgian townhouse in Bloomsbury, the kind of place where Virginia Woolf once drank gin with poets. The lift opened directly into a high-ceilinged living room with tall sash windows, walls of books, and a single, slightly wonky Christmas tree that looked as if it had been decorated by someone who had never actually done it before. One string of lights was bunched at the bottom like a tired snake. You live here? She asked, turning in a slow circle. Most of the year, Alex said, taking her coat. The Mayfair penthouse is for when I need to impress Russians. This is home. It smelled faintly of cedar and coffee. A record player spun Billie Holiday in the corner. Emma felt instantly, traitorously comfortable. They had 3 days until the Cotswolds invasion. 3 days to turn two strangers into a believable couple. Alex clapped his hands together like a drama teacher. Right. Rehearsal. We need a backstory. They sat cross-legged on an ancient Persian rug in front of the fire, a bottle of Sancerre between them, and a notebook open like battle plans. How did we meet? Emma asked. Covent Garden Market. Obviously. We're keeping as close to the truth as possible. Less to remember when your Aunt Muriel interrogates me with sherry in hand. Fine, but my family will want details. First kiss? Favorite thing about each other? Sexual chemistry? Alex raised an eyebrow. Do they actually ask that? My cousin Tom once asked my sister how many times a week she and Mark did it. He was 11. Standards have not improved. Alex laughed, the sound warm and startled. All right, first kiss under the mistletoe at a publisher's party you dragged me to last week. I don't drag people to parties. You drag me, he said firmly, scribbling it down. I was reluctant, charmingly aloof. You wore a red dress. I couldn't resist. Emma felt her cheeks heat. I don't own a red dress. You do now. He nodded toward a garment bag hanging on the back of the door. Delivered this morning. Try it later. She stared at him. You bought me a dress? 3, actually. 1 for the gala. 1 for your family Christmas. 1 in case you spill gravy down the second. Relax, Hartley. I have a stylist who owes me favors. He said it so casually she almost missed the extravagance. Almost. They worked through the details with surprising efficiency. Favorite films, hers. Love Actually, unashamedly. His The Godfather, predictably. Pet hates, people who clap when planes land. Slow walkers on the tube. How he takes his tea, black. No sugar, borderline sociopathic. How she takes hers, milky, 2 sugars, civilized. Then came the harder questions. Exes. Alex asked. Emma pulled a face. James. Together 18 months. Cheated with a colleague in accounts. Very boring betrayal. Alex's pen paused. I'm sorry. Don't be. He used Comic Sans in work emails. I should have seen it coming. He smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. My turn. There was someone, for years ago. She decided being married to a man who lived on planes wasn't her dream after all. The room felt suddenly quieter. Emma reached for the wine. We don't have to talk about it. No, we do, he said. If we're doing this, we should know where the bruises are. Her name was Clara. She kept the dog. I kept the frequent flyer miles. There was a silence filled only by the crackle of logs and Billy singing about gloomy Sundays. Eventually Emma said, So we're both a bit allergic to Christmas romance, then. Exactly why this arrangement works, he replied, raising his glass. No hearts, no mess. Just excellent acting. But later, when she tried on the red dress, silk the color of holly berries, cut on the bias, so it skimmed every curve she usually hit under jumpers, she caught sight of herself in the hallway mirror and felt something shift. The dress was perfect. He had noticed the shape of her shoulders, the length of her legs, the way she always pushed her hair behind her left ear when nervous. He had paid attention. She stepped back into the living room. Alex looked up from the sofa, and whatever clever line he'd been about to say died on his lips. Well, she asked, twirling self-consciously. He cleared his throat. You'll do, he said, voice oddly rough. They practiced touches after that, casual practice, safe. His hand at the small of her back, guiding her through imaginary doorways. Her fingers brushing lint from his lapel that wasn't there, standing close enough to share warmth but not breath. They were good at it. Too good. By midnight, they were tipsy and triumphant, sprawled on opposite ends of the sofa, trading childhood Christmas stories. Emma told him about the year her dad dressed as Father Christmas and got stuck in a chimney. Alex admitted he once received a solid gold train set and cried because he'd wanted a dog. When she finally stood to leave, he walked her to the lift. Tomorrow, he said, we road test it. Dinner with my oldest friend, Hugo. He smells lies like a bloodhound. Emma's stomach flipped. No pressure, then. He reached out, tucked that same stray hair behind her ear with deliberate care. You'll be fine, Emma Hartley. Just be you, only mine for a week. The lift doors opened. She stepped inside, heart hammering against the silk of the borrowed dress. As the doors closed, she caught his reflection watching her go, and for the first time since this madness began, she wondered who exactly was pretending. Hugo Langford's restaurant was the sort of place that didn't list prices on the menu, and played jazz so quietly you only notice it when it stopped. Tucked beneath railway arches in Bermondsey, it smelled of truffle and money. Emma had changed outfits 3 times before settling on a midnight blue jumpsuit Alex's stylist had sent over with a note that simply read, "Trust me." She didn't trust anyone that much, but the fabric felt like forgiveness against her skin. So she kept her chin high as the maitre d' led them past tables of beautiful people who all seemed to know Alex. Hugo was waiting at a corner table, red-haired and fox-sharp, wearing a waistcoat that probably cost more than Emma's monthly rent. He stood when they approached, kissed Emma on both cheeks like they were old friends, then turned to Alex with a grin sharp enough to shave with. "Christ, Voss, you actually brought a human woman. I'd started to think you were keeping an AI in the basement." Alex's smile was easy, but Emma felt his hand settle at the base of her spine, steady, possessive, perfect. "Hugo, this is Emma Hartley." "Emma," Hugo Langford. "We were at Eton together. He still hasn't forgiven me for beating him in the 100-meter freestyle." "Only because you cheated," Hugo said cheerfully, pulling out Emma's chair. "So, Emma Hartley, how on a scale of 1 to gold digger? How alarmed should I be?" Emma laughed before she could stop herself. "Somewhere between philanthropist and desperate for free dinner, I'd say." Hugo's eyes lit up. "Oh, I like her." The first hour was a masterclass in upper-class verbal fencing. Hugo asked gentle, vicious questions: where she grew up, where she went to university, what her father did, while refilling her glass every time it dipped below half. Alex parried effortlessly, adding details to their fabricated love story with the smooth confidence of a man who negotiated 9-figure deals before breakfast. But Emma noticed the small things. The way Alex's thumb brushed the inside of her wrist when Hugo asked if she was comfortable with the lifestyle, the way his shoulders loosened every time she answered for herself. By the time the main courses arrived, venison for the men, see base for her, Hugo leaned back and fixed Alex with a look Emma couldn't quite read. "All right, I'll bite. How long have you been keeping her hidden?" 3 months, Alex said without hesitation. "She's been traveling for work. Book launches in New York, Frankfurt, Edinburgh. We've been making it work long distance." Emma picked up the thread seamlessly. "He sends terribly romantic emails at 3 a.m. his time, usually about profit margins." Hugo barked a laugh. "That sounds about right." Dessert was a single perfect chocolate fondant they were meant to share. Alex broke it open, steam and molten darkness spilling across the plate. He lifted a spoonful to Emma's lips without thinking, a reflex so intimate half the table seemed to inhale at once. She took the bite, held his eyes while she swallowed, and felt something electric arc between them. Hugo watched like a man who'd just seen the final card turned. When the bill came, an amount that made Emma's eyes water, Hugo waved Alex off. "My treat. Considerate payment for the entertainment." Outside, snow had turned to sleety rain. Hugo hugged Emma goodbye with surprising warmth. "Look after him," he murmured against her ear. "He's not nearly as bulletproof as he pretends." In the back of the waiting car, heat blasting and London blurred beyond the windows, Alex let his head fall back against the leather. "Well," he asked. "Verdict. You were brilliant," she said honestly. "Terrifyingly good at lying." He turned to look at her. "So were you." Silence pooled, thick and sudden. The partition was up. The driver couldn't see them. Alex reached out, brushed a melting snowflake from her lashes with his thumb. "I meant it," he said quietly. "About the emails. I would write you terribly romantic ones at 3 a.m. if this were real." Emma's heart gave a treacherous lurch. Don't what?" "Don't say things like that when we have rules." He dropped his hand, but his gaze stayed on her face. "You're right. Sorry." They didn't speak again until the car pulled up outside her flat in Clerkenwell. She reached for the door, but he caught her wrist. "Emma." She looked back. "I know we said separate bedrooms," he said, voice rough. "But tonight, could I just walk you up? Make sure you get in safe?" It was flimsy, and they both knew it. The street was well lit. The building had a concierge, and she lived alone for 6 years without incident. Still, she heard herself say, "All right." The lift was tiny, mirrored. They stood side by side, not touching, watching their reflections climb 12 floors. When the doors opened, she fumbled her keys. He took them from her shaking fingers, unlocked the door, stepped inside only far enough to switch on the hall light. Then he looked at her, really looked, and whatever he saw made him exhale like a man who'd been holding his breath for weeks. "Good night, Emma Hartley," he said. He left before she could answer. She leaned against the closed door, pulse racing, tasting chocolate and danger and the sudden, terrifying certainty that sometime between carbonara and venison, the rules had started to feel like lies. The drive west took 3 hours, most of it spent in a silence that had teeth. Alex drove the Aston Martin himself, no chauffeur today, because he said he needed something to do with his hands. Emma watched the passenger watch frost-laced hedgerows blur past and tried not to think about the fact that in 72 hours she would have to introduce this man to her entire family as the love of her life. They had agreed on a final briefing the night before over takeaway Thai in his kitchen. "Remember, we met at the Christmas market. We've been together 3 months. You call me love when my mom's listening. You hate mushrooms. I squeeze your hand twice if I need rescuing. Simple. Foolproof. Except nothing felt simple anymore. The Hartley cottage sat at the end of a lane in Chipping Campden, honey-colored stone glowing under a thin blanket of snow. Smoke curled from a chimney. Fairy lights blinked in every window. It looked like the cover of a chocolate box and smelled, when the front door flew open of pine needles, cinnamon, and her mother's overwhelming relief. "Emma, and this must be..." Her mum stopped mid-sentence, eyes widening as Alex unfolded himself in the low car, all 6'3" of him in a navy cashmere coat that probably cost more than the cottage roof. "Mrs. Hartley," he said, striding forward with the easy confidence of a man who had never once been nervous about meeting a girlfriend's parents. "Alex Voss. Thank you for having me." He produced a bottle of 1996 Krug from seemingly nowhere, and a bouquet of white roses so perfect they looked fake. Emma's mom, Carol, 54, yoga teacher, serial hugger, actually fluttered. "Oh my goodness, come in. Shoes off, mind the flagstones, they're lethal when wet." Inside was organized chaos. Dogs, toddlers, fairy lights tangling the banisters, and the low roar of too many Hartleys in one space. Emma's dad appeared wearing a Christmas jumper that read, "Santa's favorite accountant," and shook Alex's hand with the wary respect men, reserved for anyone taller and rich in themselves. Then came the onslaught. Her sister Becca, perfect hair, perfect fiancé Mart the dentist, descended the stairs like a bridal advert. "So you're the mystery man." We'd almost given up hope. Alex smiled a smile that had disarmed Russian oligarchs. "Entirely my fault. I've been trying to monopolize her." Becca blinked, clearly reassessing. Gran was ensconced by the fire in her favorite armchair, tartan blanket over her knees, oxygen tube discreetly tucked behind her ear. When Alex crouched beside her, took her bird-bone hand and said, "Mrs. Ellison, I've heard so much about your Victoria sponge I'm afraid I've developed expectations." Gran actually cackled. "Flattery will get you everywhere, young man. Though I hope you got your looks from your mother, because that jawline is wasted on the male species." Emma exhaled for what felt like the first time since Bloomsbury. Dinner was served at the long refectory table that had hosted every Hartley Christmas since 1987. 23 people, 3 types of potatoes, and an argument about whether Die Hard is a Christmas film. It is. Alex sat between Emma and her 8-year-old cousin Poppy, who immediately recruited him into a discussion about whether reindeer could fly if they ate enough sprouts. He answered with complete seriousness, citing lift-to-drag ratios and methane propulsion. Poppy was enchanted. So quietly was Emma. Later, when the plates were cleared and the annual Hartley Charades tournament was in full swing, Alex found her in the kitchen wrestling with the cork of a second bottle of Prosecco. "Your family," he said, leaning against the Aga, "is wonderful." She snorted. "You've met them sober. Wait till the Baileys comes out." He stepped closer, voice low. "I mean it. They're loud and nosy and clearly love you ridiculous amounts. It's nice." Something in his tone made her look up. The kitchen light caught the hollow beneath his cheekbone, the faint shadows under his eyes. "You okay?" she asked. "Fine." He hesitated. "Just not used to this much family." The cork popped. She poured 2 glasses, handed him one, to surviving day 1. she said. They clinked. His fingers brushed hers and stayed a fraction too long. Upstairs, the bedroom situation was exactly as negotiated. She had her childhood room with the sloping ceiling and faded Spice Girls posters. He had the guest room across the landing. Separate, safe. At 1:17 a.m., Emma was still awake, listening to the house settle, when there was a soft knock. Alex stood in the doorway in gray joggers and an old Oxford t-shirt, hair tousled, holding 2 mugs. "Couldn't sleep," he whispered. "Thought you might want cocoa. Your dad says you still take 3 marshmallows and a sprinkle of cinnamon." She stared. "You asked my dad how I take my cocoa? I'm nothing if not thorough." She shuffled over. He stepped inside, closed the door with his heel, and handed her a mug. They sat on the edge of her narrow single bed like teenagers, knees almost touching. Outside, snow had started again, thick silent flakes against the window. "Your gran asked me if I was going to marry you," he said quietly. Emma choked on a marshmallow. "She what?" "Said I had honest eyes and good childbearing hips." He paused. "I told her I was working on it." Emma's heart performed an undignified somersault. Alex looked at her then, really looked, and the air in the tiny room seemed to thin. "Don't," she said, but it came out breathless. "I'm not." He set his mug on the floor, took hers, and did the same. "I'm really trying not to." The space between them was only inches. She could smell cinnamon on his breath, cedar on his skin. "2 more days," she whispered. "2 more days," he echoed. Neither of them moved. Then, somewhere downstairs, a door slammed and Uncle Richard started singing Bohemian Rhapsody, off-key. The spell cracked. Alex huffed a laugh, pressed his forehead briefly to hers, no more than that, and stood. "Night, Hartley. Night, Voss." He left the door ajar exactly 2 inches, the way her mother always insisted when she was 15 and had boys over to study. Emma lay back, stared at the glow-in-the-dark stars still stuck to her ceiling, and wondered how on earth either of them was going to survive Christmas Day without doing something irreparably stupid. Christmas morning arrived white and breathless. Emma woke to the sound of children thundering down the stairs and her mother's off-key rendition of "Oh Holy Night" in the kitchen. Sunlight poured through the frosted window, turning her childhood bedroom into a snow globe. For one disorientated second, she forgot everything. The contract, the money, the rules. Then she remembered the almost kiss at 1 a.m. and wanted to pull the duvet over her head forever. She found Alex in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, flipping perfect golden pancakes, while her dad hovered proudly with the maple syrup. He looked unfairly good in the morning light, hair still damp from the shower, wearing one of her father's ancient bah humbug aprons. "Morning, love," he said, the endearment so natural her mother didn't even blink. "Morning," she managed, accepting a pancake and a look that promised they would talk later. Presents were open in the traditional Hartley riot. Paper everywhere, dogs stealing ribbons, Gran presiding like a tiny tartan queen. Alex had, infuriatingly, bought everyone perfect gifts. Cashmere socks for her dad, a rare first edition for her mum, a ridiculous diamond-studded collar for the ancient spaniel. When Emma opened her small box and found a vintage silver bookmark engraved with the words, "Once upon a time," she had to blink very hard. Then it was time for Gran's annual Christmas speech. She insisted on standing, oxygen tank and all, and the room quieted the way it always did when she spoke. "I'm not long for this world," she began, ignoring the protests, "so I'll say what needs saying. This family is loud and messy and occasionally drunk before noon, but we are lucky. We have each other. And this year we have 2 extras, Mark, who fixes teeth, and Alex, who apparently fixes everything else." Laughter rippled. Gran turned to Alex. "You, young man, have made my granddaughter smile in a way I haven't seen since she was small. Don't cock it up." "Gran." Emma hissed, mortified. But Alex just stood, took Gran's hand, and said clearly, "I don't intend to, Mrs. Ellison." The room erupted in cheers, and someone started, for he's a jolly good fellow. Emma wanted the floor to swallow her. Later, while the turkey rested and the men argued over carving rights, Alex found her in the garden. Snow had stopped. The world was hushed and glittering. "We need to talk," he said. I know. He pulled a familiar black folder from inside his coat. The contract. He tore it cleanly in half, then quarters, then let the pieces flutter into the snow like dark confetti. I wired the money back this morning, he said quietly. All of it. Emma stared at the scraps melting into the white. Why? Because I don't want to pay you to be with me. I want you to choose it. Choose me. No contract. No pretense. No end date on the 27th December. Her breath clouded between them. I'm in love with you, Emma Hartley, he said, simple and devastating. I think I have been since you spilled coffee on me and looked like you wanted to die. I'm terrified because I'm rubbish at this and you deserve someone who isn't, but I'm more terrified of letting you walk away thinking it was ever just pretend. The garden was silent except for their breathing. Emma stepped forward, took the lapels of his coat in both hands, and kissed him. It wasn't careful or rehearsed. It was months of restraint finally snapping. Snow in her hair, his hands coming up to cradle her face like she was something precious. When they broke apart, forehead still touching, she was laughing and crying at once. You absolute idiot, she whispered. I've been in love with you since you asked my dad how I take my cocoa. He laughed too, the sound shaky with relief. From the kitchen window, 23 Hartleys watched in delighted chaos. Someone started clapping. Uncle Richard definitely wolf whistled. Alex rested his chin on her head. So, new terms. New terms, she agreed. Duration, indefinite. Public displays of affection, unlimited. Separate bedrooms, negotiable. He grinned against her hair. I was hoping you'd say that. Much later, after turkey and 3 kinds of pudding, after Gran had declared them disgustingly adorable and made Alex promise to bring her great-grandchildren before I'm pushing up daisies, they sat together on the sofa, her legs across his lap, his arm around her shoulders. The fire crackled. Carols played softly. Someone had spiked the mulled wine with far too much brandy. Emma looked at the torn contract now soggy in the garden, at her family bickering happily around them, at the man who had walked into her life as a stranger and was leaving it as everything. Best Christmas ever? He asked quietly. She turned, kissed the corner of his mouth, and smiled. Once upon a time, she said, a girl needed a boyfriend for Christmas. She got something infinitely better. Outside, snow began to fall again, soft and forgiving, covering the torn pieces of paper until they disappeared completely. And inside, under the lopsided tree, with its mismatched baubles and too many lights, 2 people who had agreed to pretend discovered the most realistic thing of all. Sometimes the best stories we tell to survive the holidays turn out to be the truest ones we ever live.